Loving is easy. What's hard is talking about what truly sustains a yes. When we avoid topics like money, boundaries, jealousy, the future, routine, family, and intimacy, silence becomes a wall, and the wall becomes distance. If this sounds familiar, breathe. You're not broken, you just need a roadmap for communication. Today, I'm going to show you the 7 difficult conversations every couple needs to have before taking the next step. No accusations, no games. These are simple, practical questions to align expectations, transform tension into partnership, and restore a sense of security. The proposal is straightforward. 1 conversation per week. 7 weeks to make your relationship lighter, more honest, and more mature. Because the goal isn't to win arguments, it's to win together. Ready? The first conversation is scary, but it's the one that frees you. Let's begin. Imagine a table set on an ordinary evening, 2 glasses that still clink when they touch, and a silence that isn't peace, it's waiting. You look at each other, knowing the next step is there, almost begging to be said. But the words stall because they seem too big to fit between a knife and fork. The desire is real, to build a life together with good predictability, one that welcomes rather than suffocates, to save time and tears with conversations that don't explode later, to have clarity about money, family, sex, roles, and dreams without hurting each other along the way. Today, you'll receive a simple and honest map for navigating 7 difficult conversations before moving in together, getting engaged, or getting married, in a way that brings you closer instead of wearing you down. You don't need heroic courage, just a script that holds your hand and shows you the next step. And when it seems like the conversation is going to fall into an abyss, there's a silent trick that puts you back on the same side of the table. And it's from this that the cliffhanger that opens the door to everything is born. Most couples jump straight to the logistics of when and where, but stumble over how and why, confusing urgency with certainty. The most common mistake is trying to solve everything in a single night, as if love were a matter of condominium deadlines, and the result is a choked voice, vague promises, and a weariness that disguises itself as agreement. The near secret is to reverse the weight. It's not about winning arguments, it's about gaining a shared language. When you trade dueling for a shared dictionary, the mood shifts without speeches. It seems small, but it changes everything. To get there, don't start by asking for agreement on the future. Start by understanding this. Every difficult conversation is, in fact, a conversation about safety. The safety of being able to express one's feelings without being punished, of disagreeing without being treated as a threat, of asking questions without seeming unloving. Today, instead of a rigid manual, I propose a lived path, 7 conversations that you will have in short chapters, with a start and end time, and a small ritual that prepares the ground. The ritual is simple and almost domestic. You choose an anchor object, a pen, a book, or your promise ring. The one holding the object speaks, and the other practices complete presence. Without screens, without crossed arms, with the body turned and a non-competitive gaze. Before each conversation, you agree on a realistic time, somewhere between 15 and 25 minutes, and a guiding question that keeps you on track. Like someone putting a ribbon on the path to avoid getting lost in the woods. This framework works because it takes the conversation out of the realm of emotional improvisation and brings it to a setting where there is contour. And where there is contour, there is breathing. If one of you feels a fever rising, you'll mark the pause with the same elegance with which people stand up silently in a movie theater so as not to interrupt the scene. Today, at the end of the episode, you'll have a 7-day plan to address each topic with less friction and more precision. And the signs that it worked won't come in fancy speeches, but in small gestures, fewer heavy sighs, more laughter that escapes, more hands reaching for each other at bedtime. And it's precisely when this grounding atmosphere appears that you can tackle the first invisible foundation that underpins all 7 conversations. The principle that organizes everything is emotional translation. Every couple speaks the same language in grammar, but rarely in their internal dictionary. When one says, I want stability, the other might hear, I want control. When one asks for more presence, the other hears, you're not enough. Translating is learning to ask what that word means in that body. A simple scene helps. On a Sunday afternoon, she said she needs financial security. He responds and he already works a lot and feels accused. The conversation sours because security and accusation fight for the wheel. The micro exercise is to respond in mirror form. When you say security, do you mean predictable bills, minimal savings, or being able to breathe without debt? And wait for the full answer before arguing. This works because it shifts the mind from the courtroom to the workshop, where things are fixed without blaming. Today, the challenge is to choose a trigger word for the couple and, together, create a definition that applies within the relationship. Write it in a short sentence on visible paper. Knowing it worked means noticing that tension instantly drops and the person explains themselves more calmly. And with dictionary in hand, we arrive at the first quick win action, the one that delivers immediate results and encourages follow-up. The first difficult conversation has a simple name: we money and me money. You won't finalize a spreadsheet today, you'll just tell money stories, like opening a drawer of memories. He remembers the fear of seeing the refrigerator empty. She remembers her father who hid bills in the car manual. By sharing the origin, you dismantle the minefield. The practical action takes 15 minutes. Each person says which expense is untouchable because it suits the soul, and which expense they're willing to negotiate for the next 3 months. The emotional reason behind it is the feeling of preserved autonomy. Because love isn't about dissolving into the other. It's about synchronizing different beats without losing the beat. The micro challenge is to choose one item for a common safety net, even if symbolic, and one item for my care that no one questions. Knowing it worked is looking at the week statement and not feeling guilty about buying your favorite coffee, nor fear when paying the electricity bill. And with your wallet less worried, the conversation gains space to touch an even more delicate core. The second conversation addresses intimacy and touch. It's not about performance, it's about body language. In a dimly lit room, you name what soothes and what closes with short, gentle phrases. When you touch my shoulder before bed, my body understands it's safe. When we spend a day without contact, I create stories that distance me. The subtle trap is to trade desire as a task, and the antidote is to trade care as a mood. Measuring progress here isn't about counting encounters. It's about noticing whether the hallway touch has become more frequent and whether the good morning kiss has lost its rush. Today's micro challenge is to choose a standard gesture of affection for tiring days, something that doesn't depend on high spirits, like a 20-second hug in the kitchen. When this settles, the conversation becomes brave enough to play without fear and bring lightness back to the process. Now the conversation becomes a game of discovery. You write down ideas for 15-minute microdates that fit into your daily routine on small pieces of paper. Listening to music in the dark, cooking something new with 3 ingredients, walking without a cell phone to the corner and coming back, recounting the day as if it were a movie. On tired nights, you draw a piece of paper and continue without debate. Playfulness breaks down resistance because it takes the decision out of the realm of eternal negotiation and into the realm of agreed-upon chance. For 7 days, vary the papers and keep a simple record of what made you laugh the most. The sign that it's working is that serious conversations proceed better after these experiences, as if your body has understood it's not being interrogated. With your lightness restored, it's time to address the triggers that sabotage everything when you least expect it. There are phrases that trigger alarms. You always, you never. That's nonsense. When they appear, the body understands an attack and retaliates or freezes. The practical alternative is to name the episode and its impact with humility. Yesterday, when the message went unanswered until nightfall, my stomach closed and I created a bad movie. Another trap is arguing while hungry, and the antidote is a short code, like water break, which authorizes a 10-minute break without abandon. Finally, avoid interrogations with the car window open or the bedroom door open. The conversation needs a neutral space and relaxed shoulders. The before and after is evident. In the before, voices rise. In the after, sighs lengthen and curiosity returns. With the triggers under gentle surveillance, the path to discussing quality time with precision opens. Transforming time together into time that brings you closer requires a simple design. You choose a set time for the house, perhaps the first half hour of the evening at home, and agree on to fixed questions that become a ritual. What were the highs and lows of your day? And is there anything I can do that would make tomorrow easier? For busy schedules, there's pocket mode. 5 minutes at the door before leaving, with your phone put away and your body turned away. The sign of success is noticing that the answers become less automatic and more structured, that the other person begins to share what they need without fear of appearing fragile. When this routine establishes itself, it's possible to touch on a point that seems individual, but changes the atmosphere between us. There are two personal habits that regulate a couple's temperature: decent sleep and restorative rest. It's not an endless list, it's a discrete process. Those who sleep poorly fight with the world, and those who never rest get confused by other people's urgencies. The idea is for each person to adopt a minimum level of care that protects their mood, such as leaving their cell phones out of the bedroom and taking a short walk after lunch. The way to integrate without becoming a lecture is to share how this affects the other person. When I sleep 7 hours, I don't become a storm with a dirty cup. The narrative checklist lives in phrases. Wake up without jumping out of bed. Breathe before opening messages. Choose the day's fight with care. If in 2 weeks the average temperature in the house drops half a degree, you'll feel it in the way you close the door at night. And then a symbolic memory can cement everything. Rituals remind you of who you are when haste tries to erase you. It could be a weekly note hidden in the most mundane place in the house, a themed photo in a digital frame labeled "Our Collection of Little Nothings," or a spot in the city that becomes a password for reconnection. The secret is not to demand grandeur. It's to keep it small and consistent. Variations avoid routine. Sometimes the note becomes a short audio message. Sometimes a photo brings back a memory from the beginning. The thermometer of success is when a bad day finds in the note a stepping stone to climb. With this memory base, it's possible to face inevitable collisions with a quick protocol that doesn't humiliate or delay. The repair begins with the pause he names without drama. I stopped because I love you and I don't want to make things worse. Then comes the validation that doesn't agree with everything, but acknowledges what was experienced. I understand that when I arrived late, your body remembered that feeling of abandonment. Then, the short summary that retains the meaning. What I need to do is warn you early and assume responsibility. Finally, the proportional, not grandiose, reparative gesture, perhaps washing today's dishes because the other person's energy was drained there. Limits matter. If the conversation devolves into a personal attack, the anchor is returned and a new time is set. What if someone is unavailable? The protocol has a safety net, an agreed-upon text that recalls the pact. I'm not rejecting you. I'm regulating the atmosphere so we can talk tomorrow at 8. When this sinks in, the 7-day schedule becomes fertile ground. The week doesn't need heroism. It needs cadence. On the first day, they choose the couple's trigger word and write the translation that works at home. On the second, they tell money stories and define an untouchable expense and a negotiable item. On the third, they agree on the standard gesture of affection for tired days. On the fourth, they set the rules for the microdate game and randomly start one. On the fifth, they test the pause code and check how their bodies react. On the sixth, they protect sleep with a concrete decision that fits today. On the seventh, they create the first memory, write and record what they discovered about each other. The golden rule is little with constancy, because constancy is what carves relief on the map. The sign of success is simple. The house seems bigger on the inside. And with the rhythm settled, it's time to look at the scenery that sustains everything. Environment communicates before any word. The conversation table needs a chair that doesn't creak. The light needs to soften your face. Your cell phone needs to learn to wait. Choose a place in the house that becomes a zone of understanding. and a bi-weekly anchor time to review agreements, like someone taking the car for a quick checkup to avoid a breakdown. Small visual reminders help without being childish. A rubber band on the wrist that reminds you not to use always or never. An hourglass that measures each person's speech. Reviewing every 2 weeks prevents the agreement from becoming dust, and signs of progress appear in everyday life. Doors that slam less, laughter that erupts in the hallway. Requests that come out more clearly, with the house in tune. Closing ceases to be a goodbye and becomes an invitation. If you follow this map for 7 to 30 days, you'll experience rewards beyond description. The conversation about moving in together won't sound like a threat, but rather like a plan that respects each person's history. The conversation about money won't bite. It'll guide priorities. Touch won't be a bargaining chip. It'll be a language of care. You'll hear new phrases, like "thank you for translating before correcting me." And you'll notice silent gestures, like the hand that reaches for the other before giving a difficult answer. If this guide helped you, comment ritual and I'll send you a PDF summarizing the guiding questions and micro-challenges of each conversation, so you can stick them on your fridge like a travel map. And if you want to delve deeper, there's a complimentary video on how to align future expectations without killing spontaneity, which fits like the missing piece in this puzzle. Click and stay with me there, because it is precisely this fine-tuning that prepares the ground for the most feared and most liberating conversation, that of dreams that change shape without changing us. Odds. When the pillars begin to align, what sustains the daily yes isn't just consensus, it's living memory. Haste, bills, deadlines, and small frustrations have a cruel knack for erasing the good story you've already written. Therefore, symbolic ritual isn't romantic frills. It's a tool for preserving your bond. It reminds your body, with small, repeated signals, that you are more than the day's problems. Think of ritual as a lighthouse installed in your routine. It doesn't control the storm, but it prevents the boat from crashing into the rocks. What to do now is to inaugurate a simple, repeatable, and almost childlike gesture, so accessible, that restores texture to the we without relying on inspiration. The scene is domestic, an ordinary evening, a kitchen with soft lighting, you standing leaning against the counter, a pen and paper. The one holding the inker proposes a format that fits real life, and the other, instead of polishing the gesture, agrees to try it imperfectly. Because ritual only comes into being if it's born small. The ritual could be a weekly note hidden in the most banal place, like behind the coffee pot or tucked into a coat pocket. It's not a 2-page letter. It's a sentence that captures a moment and the feeling that accompanied it. Something like, "When you laughed at my chaos today, the house fit again." It could be a themed photo taken at the same time every Sunday, taken without production and renamed with a title only you understand. Little Nothings number 12, building a gallery that proves, in pixels, that life has beauty between one dish and another. It could be a mutually agreed upon our place, a park bench, a corner, a hallway in the building that becomes a password for reconnection when the mood turns sour. You spend 5 minutes there. Resolving nothing, just so your body remembers the hand that finds the other. Why it works lies less in poetry and more in neurobiology. Repetition of safe signals teaches the brain to associate the pair with regulation. And this protects perception on days when everything screams. Today's micro-challenge takes 15 minutes and involves commitment, not perfection. You choose a format, define when it will happen, and launch it now. If it's a node, the first one is created today and hidden in a place obvious enough to avoid turning into a frustrating treasure hunt. If it's a photo, the first one is taken without tidying the room, with a caption explaining why that moment deserved a frame. If it's a place you stop by on your way back from the grocery store, touch the wall, braid together, and, without a word, return home. To prevent the ritual from becoming a demand, you agree on a rule of compassion. If one forgets, the other doesn't turn it into a weapon, but simply reappears with a pocket version. Perhaps a 15-second audio message saying, "I'm still here." The sign that it worked is concrete. In a turbulent week, the note changes the underlying mood for a few minutes. The photo becomes a reminder that interrupts a catastrophic thought. Our place provides a foundation when the conversation stalls. It's not magic, it's repeated. Variations maintain freshness without losing their form. Every now and then, the note becomes a crooked drawing, the photo becomes an audio recording. Our place becomes a micro-ceremony of 2 breaths and a lingering look. When routine tries to hijack the ritual, reduce its size, never its presence. If the week devours your energy, the note can be just a word, the photo can be a snapshot of your flip-flops in the sun. The encounter can be a touch on the shoulder in the hallway. It's also important to protect its purpose. A ritual doesn't resolve conflict. It doesn't replace a request for forgiveness. It's not a reward for good behavior. It's the backdrop that makes forgiveness possible and the request easier to hear. If you realize the practice has become a bargaining chip, I did it, you didn't, pause, remember the intention, and return with an agreement of kindness. Because the metric of the ritual is atmosphere, not counting. Discreetly record the best lines and images in a notebook at home. Flipping through it every 2 weeks becomes an emotional review that gives perspective. You see, in sequence, proof that, despite the small battles, you continue to build something that flourishes. And when a truly bad day occurs, this notebook acts as a first aid kit. To reread pages, breathe new life back into your life, reminding you that today's bad version isn't the only true one. The ritual, then, begins to act as a shock absorber. The bumps exist, but the impact doesn't hurt equally. At this point, you can face the inevitable collisions with more technique and less drama. Because not even the best lighthouse eliminates all the stones, and when the hull is scratched, what saves you is knowing how to repair without humiliating, without delaying, and without turning love into a courtroom. It is precisely this transition, from the memories that sustain to the procedure that repairs, that leads us to the next chapter, a short, human, and repeatable protocol for mending the bond when conflict cracks the surface.